Okay, so today we're going to take a look at MicroLesson number 4. So we're going to assume that you've pulled it up from the website. So here we are, we're looking at a view that includes a piano part, which is on a grand staff, which means treble and bass clefs together, and then we have a drum set part. And these parts all go together because on the left-hand side there's a vertical bar line that connects all three staves. So these parts are meant to be played simultaneously. So first of all, take a quick look at the sheet music. We'll notice that we have a total of 8 measures. And we know that the 8th measure is the last measure because of the double bar line. So we have 8 measures total. We have right and left hand piano, and we've got drum set. So first of all, if we notice on the drum set part, we've got hi-hat or cymbal on the top, and then the snare drum is the next one down, and finally the bass drum or the kick drum is the bottom part. So what I want to do is go ahead and create 2 tracks for the drum set. You could probably also play it on one single track if you want to play the beat simultaneous. So we've got 1/8 notes in the hi-hat and then quarter notes and 1/8 notes in the bass drum and snare drum respectively. So let's start by programming our drum beat, and let's start with bass drum and snare drum. So if we'll go back to the GarageBand view, I'm assuming we've already selected our drum kit sound. Okay, so we're ready to go. So we want to select a comfortable tempo for recording. So you can select from the project drop down here. I would recommend approximately 80 beats per minute. So just drag the tempo slider to 80 beats per minute. Then we can go back to the music and practice the beat. And the beat continues all the way through the 8th measure. So the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I only need to play it once or twice, and then I can loop it. So I'm going to set the control to count in. That's going to give me 4 beats before I need to start playing. And then I can simply hit the red record button, or I can hit the R for recording. So let's go ahead and lay down our bass drum and snare drum. So I'm just going to take the first 2 measures. To stop the cursor, you can either hit play again or the space bar. That's a shortcut. So the first thing I want to do is fix the timing or quantize this region. We always want to quantize to the fastest note value, in which case is the 8th note. So I'm going to go down here to the enhanced timing region. I'm going to select the 8th note. Before I do that, I want to drag this view so it's more visible. And you'll see the notes actually move slightly. This is causing them to be aligned perfectly in the timing. So let's listen to what we have so far with the bass drum and snare drum. Okay, I'm happy with the way that's going. So what I'm going to do is I have 2 measures of music, but I need 8. So I'm going to hold down Option, select the region, and then drag it, thereby creating 3 additional regions. So I have a total of 8 measures now in my bass drum and snare drum part. The next thing I want to do is add a track, so I'm going to hit the plus icon over here on the left. I'm going to hit create a track, and I want a software instrument because I want it to be MIDI. I'm going to select from the drum kit list this instrument called drum kit. And again, I've got the drum sound that I want. Now I want to record the hi-hat. This could also be played on a cymbal, maybe a ride cymbal. So what I have is 8th notes, continuous 8th notes in the hi-hat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So I need to lay that down over the top of my drum beat. Again, all I need is a few good measures. So let's set the count in and let's record. Okay, so as you can hear, it was a little choppy in the first measure. Second measure improved just a little bit, but we have quantizing, so it doesn't have to be perfect. When you quantize, you're telling the computer to move to the closest value that's consistent with that note, and the boxes will move to adjust for you. So let's listen to our 2 measures. So now we have a nice and steady hi-hat to go with the rest of the drum part. I'm going to Option drag my drum kit regions, and now I have 8 measures of drums. Let's move on to the next part of the lesson, which involves chords. Now, chords are when you have usually 3 or more notes played at the same time. A chord that's in root position is where the notes are stacked right on top of each other, and on the keyboard that's usually every other key. So there's a neat function in GarageBand where you can actually pull up a keyboard, and that's under the window drag down, and it's called keyboard. And this is nice because you can also expand it to a larger view, which I'm going to do for you here so you can really see what's going on the keyboard. Now before we do that, I'm going to add another track, and this is going to be for the right hand piano or treble clef. So it's already selected grand piano. So what I was talking about with the chords, there are 3 different chords in the music. There's a C chord, which is C, E, and G. Then it moves to an F chord, F, A, and C. Finally a G chord, G, B, and D. And then a return to the first C chord, C, E, and G. And in music we call this a 1-4-5 chord progression. It's chords built on the scale degrees of the scale. So this is a very common chord progression. So we have 4 quarter notes, then a whole note, 4 quarter notes, then a whole note, and so on and so forth. So let's learn the chords very quickly. For the C chord, the C is on the bottom, and the C is the one that's just to the left of the 2 black keys. So C, E, and G. And as you can see there, 1 note apart from each other, and there's a note in between, or a key in between, if you will. The F chord is based on F, and finally the G chord is based on G. So those are our 3 different chord patterns that we're going to need. So let's go ahead, and once we start the recording, we can go ahead and read the music. In fact, let's do it 4 measures at a time. So I'm going to play 4 quarter notes, then a whole note on a C chord, then 4 quarter notes and a whole note on an F chord. So let's do that first. We're going to leave our drum kit on for timing purposes, and we'll go ahead and record the piano. Now move to F. And I'm going to stop right there after the first 4 measures. Notice how I'm holding out the whole note for 4 beats, or almost 4 beats, until I move to the next chord. I can't quite hold it 4 beats because I need to move my hand to the next chord. So again, we're going to time this out, or quantize it to the quarter note, because now our quarter note is the fastest moving rhythm. That's the 1/4 note in the drop down. So we're going to select quarter note, double click here, quantize to the quarter note, and now we're ready to move on to the second half of the right hand. So if we scroll down, we're going to start with a G chord, so 5 G chords, and then 5 C chords. So here we go. Let's go back to our GarageBand. Now if I set the cursor to begin where I left off with the other region, it's just going to give me 4 beats of a count in, and then we're going to be ready to go with the right hand. So it's a G chord first, and then a C chord. Let's give it a try. Back to a C chord. And there it is. So we're going to quantize this to the quarter note as well. You may notice some of your notes are gray and some are a darker black. That has to do with touch sensitivity. Those can be selected individually and altered by this note velocity tool here. You can also transpose a region's pitch by using this pitch slider here in the left-hand corner. So now we have all the correct chords. When you're playing chords, typically you'll want to use your thumb, middle finger, and pinky. But that's not always the case, but that's a general rule. So now let's listen to the first 3 parts together. Okay, so far so good. We're going to need one more track. So let's go ahead and add one more software instrument track. This is also going to be a grand piano. You can hit return to take your cursor back to measure 1. Now let's take a quick look at the left hand. The right hand was done in what's called the treble clef. It looks like a cursive G. That's normally associated with right hand notes on the piano. The bass clef is down here on the lower part of the staff, or lower part of the grand staff for piano, and that's generally associated with lower notes or notes in the left hand. So when you're playing piano, you usually use right and left hand, but not always. So the left hand part is outlined a little bit differently. It's also outlined in the same chords, however, you're playing single notes instead of block chords. And this is known as an arpeggio. An arpeggio is a broken chord. So it's a way of writing an interesting bass line while keeping the same chord layout. The only difference is when we go to the F chord, we're going to go down for the left hand instead of up like we did for the right hand. But it's outlining the same chord. So if we want to go back and review very quickly on our overscale piano here, we're going to be down an octave here on the left hand. So you can actually just change the register by scrolling down. Let's see, let's go back. I'll have to double check the technique. Maybe it's here. There we go. So if you just move it one octave with the blue slider, it gets you to where we want to be. So the C that you're going to be playing on the piano in front of you is actually one octave lower than where you were for the right hand. But what I've done for demonstration purposes is I've just pushed that over to the left so the notes are sounding. So the arpeggio is that same C chord we learned, but notes one at a time. Then we go down for F. Hold, 2, 3, 4, now to G. 2, 3, back to C. Hold, 2, 3, 4, release. So there we have the left hand part. So we're going to go ahead and do the entire recording because we just went over it together. So let's go ahead and lay down the final track, which is the left hand piano. So I'm going to hit R on the keyboard as a shortcut. I get 4 beats, and the recordings always begin where the cursor is placed. Right now it's at the very beginning. So here we go. I'm going to hit R, and we'll have 4 beats. Make sure the right octave. Okay, here we go. Okay, and we're going to stop right there. Hopefully you heard that I made an error, and if you didn't, that's all right. We'll double click here, and if we can actually take a look, you can always stretch the view with the slider. So let's see if we can find that incorrect note. So you can always see, there we go. So there are 2 regions, one on top of the next, and generally it's going to be the longer one. So this was a note error. We're going to go ahead and delete that. Then I'm going to double click this track, and again, my fastest note is a quarter note. So I'm going to go ahead and quantize to the quarter note. And I can slide this slider to the left for a smaller view. Now I want to hear everything all together for my completed project. And I'll turn the master track up a little bit so hopefully you can hear it better. So here are all parts together. Okay, and that's it. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you, and good luck creating MicroLesson 4.